Okay, this is the Gardner place where we lived when I was young, and my grandpa Lawrence Larson lived here with us, and my aunt Lily lived on the other side of the on a road on the other side of the creek who that ran through, and sometimes she would come from her house to fish in the creek, and we'd meet her at the creek, and we'd have a picnic, and there was a bridge that went across the creek where it was really shallow, and there was always a great place to play in the water there because it was sandy bottom and it was um, so shallow that there was no danger of us drowning, but we had a great time in it. And uh, we had there were apple trees here, and when my sister was alive, we would play out under the apple trees, and we would make little nest on the bottom of the tree with leaves and sticks and whatever, and pretend they were our house. And that was the kind of thing that she could do. Clifford was and Donald, I think, were born here. My grandpa Larson died here, and I can remember my mom went upstairs to wake him because he slept upstairs, and found it that he had died in the night. Uh, and we used to have great parties here. Uncle Laverne would come home from the Navy, and he would, in the wintertime, they always had oyster stew and ice cream that you made in a ice cream maker that you had in a tub of ice. And Lyle Smith and I would be the guys who had to turn the crank on it, and you could only turn it so fast or it wouldn't freeze. And you had to be careful not to get salt water that was in the tub to go into the ice cream freezer. And so they would all get together, my parents and the Smiths and anyone else in the neighborhood. And Uncle Laverne would show them all different ways to have oysters. And my dad, I'm sure that probably oysters were too expensive to feed the kids. So he always told us that if we had an oyster, we had to bite it before we swallowed it, otherwise it would crawl back up. So we always had the broth and oyster crackers floating in our oyster stew. We didn't eat the oysters. And down the road a little bit is Ray McCollum's house, and the second place that we lived in, the house that's up on the hill behind us here. Once we lived up there, and it was owned by
Mm-hmm.
it was owned by Flossie Hutchins, and she was a pretty. I don't know that I ever knew she had a husband, but she had a daughter named Mary Linda, who went to high school with me. And so one time they had a cistern, which was a place where you kept like rainwater that you used to wash clothes in. And so it had a big, heavy cement cover that went on it. And she left the cover off, and one of her pigs fell in. So she had to get my dad to come and rescue the pig. And I don't know, her and my mom had a little disagreement one day, and my mother locked her in the basement. So it was always the great thing in the neighborhood to laugh about Opal locking Flossie in the basement. And she was like a realtor, and so she sold the place to the Gerzinias, and I can't spell her name. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, Sally and her husband became really good friends. And then from here, in like when I was in seventh grade, from here we moved over to the McMullen farm on Highway O. So, we had a big swing in the tree here, and we always did a lot of fun things. Dad let us have the corn crib to play in, so we'd have to always clean it out because we had all kinds of cans and junk that we played with our dolls. So I guess that's what I know.
So did you say you lived up where Flossie Hutchinson's
right,
place
yes.
was too?
Oh, yeah.
How old were you there then?
Well, I don't really know. Probably old enough that Ellen was in the hospital and back and forth. I have some pictures from that. Maybe I was maybe 11, 12.
Did you live there before you lived in the Gardner place or after?
This is the Gardner place.
No, the one behind.
Oh, the one at Grazinia's?
Did you say you lived in that one?
Yes, and it had the original basement was sandstone walls, and we used to go in the basement and scrape the different colors of sandstone so that we could make pies that were pink or yellow or whatever. And it was then when Sally and her husband moved out here themselves, they finished off the basement, which was like, oh no.
Which one did you live in first?
This one, the Gardner
And then you
place.
moved into
Then
that
we
one?
moved up to that one.
And then you moved
Then we moved to and I was like in 7th grade when we moved over to McMillan's.